Recording in progress. Thank you. And I am going to put on speaker view. Okay, so welcome everyone on the first day of the summit, Boomer or Bloomer, what's next? And my name is Ingun Bol, and I'm the founder of the Wise Move Society, one of the organizations that is organizing this summit, and the Brave Starts, the organization we're collaborating with, is represented this afternoon by Mike Mansfield. He's also a member of the Wise Move Society, so he can represent both organizations. So it's really great to have him here.
I should have two hats here, shouldn't I?
You have two hats, yes. Fantastic. Yeah, okay, so a little bit about me, Wise Move Society. Wise Move Society started last year, May 1st, actually, 2021, and was started from Francis. You're unmuted. But anyhow, we launched on May 1st last year because we really wanted to organize this platform for the 50+ generation, a global platform, a global community where they can meet like-minded people who are also maybe in a transition like you are or like others are, but also to recreate, to re-innovate, to really work on our future, because we're not on our way out, we're still part of that future. And that is always a time, or for most of us also a time, that we need to reinvent ourselves, that we work on our healthy aging, very important, that we work on building new networks, on building new support systems, finding our new purpose for the next phase in our life, working on upskilling, reskilling, leadership skills, entrepreneurial skills, so much that can be done. But it's also an organization that works with companies, with government organizations to create that multi-generational workspace. So we're now almost 1 year on the way, and really love doing it. And I see that many people already from all over the world join us today, also from the Wise Move Society, but also from Brave Start. So Mike, the floor is yours to give a short intro about Brave Starts.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the Brave Start members who are dialing in today. I see a few well-known and friendly faces on the screen. So Brave Starts is similar in terms of the objectives and what we're trying to do, but based in the UK. And it's a non-profit organization. Currently, there are around 2,500 members. But again, it's really focused on helping people to get the most out of their later years in work, and really realizing that people's view on transitioning into retirement, but people's view on what they can achieve in what's termed your later career, really is open to lots of possibilities. So we really try to make connections and find opportunities for people through networking and through organizing events to bring people together to help them discover what they can do, but also try and make sure that our findings and that the work we do is really based on research, and are very lucky to have a great group of volunteers and a wonderful board that's based in the UK doing the same thing. So it's wonderful that we can collaborate with the Wise Move Society and make sure that we can add more to the international dimension for the discussion today.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. And
we'll see more
of your.
I hear echo.
I hear echo.
Is that just me?
Is that just me?
No, you echoing.
No, you echoing.
I think we all are.
Yeah. Okay, so now I think it's gone. Okay, so I am sharing my screen to show you a bit of course, what we are going to do today, but also the 3 days in total. So So it's a 3-day program. And, you know, with a summit, you can make a choice to make one long day or even two more long days. We talked about that, but that was not the way we wanted to bring it. 3 topics, 3 days, 2 hours. So it will be very effective, but also very much focused on how can we talk about it, you know, and we need that to be interactive and to really have that conversation going. So there will be a lot of breakout rooms on each of the days. So today it will be the multi-generational workforce. On April 7th, senior entrepreneurship, and Mike will share a bit more about that at the end of this session. And on April 12th, we will share about how to live our best later life. And all 3 days, amazing speakers. So yes, I can understand if this is the only day that you can join us, or you just picked one of the days, and that is really great. But you know, all 3 days are really worth your time. So really hope that we can welcome you on all 3 days. And we're going to start with our first speaker, our keynote speaker, Bradley Sherman, and he's already in the room. Just short about him, because we want to let him speak and not us. He has been working for quite some years for AARP, the American Association for Retired Persons, with his focus on aging readiness and competitiveness. And what I liked about that is what I saw, a lot of the people who are working in this industry and working with this 50+ generation are themselves in that age group. But Bradley must have been very young when he started working with this group. So I love to hear that story. He's the founder of the Super Age, a demographic futurist and opinion maker on things dealing with the business of longevity. And he's the author of the Super Age, Decoding Our Demographic Destiny. And I'm almost the last chapter, and it's really great read. So if you want to learn more about what is happening in this age group, this is really, really a good book to start on. So I'm going to stop share, and Bradley, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone who's in the US, and obviously good afternoon to everyone who's in Europe. Today. It's nice to be with you. I obviously wish I could be there, that we could all be together in person. Hopefully we'll get there soon. As Ingen mentioned, obviously, I do have a long history in aging. I'm a bit of an anomaly. I got into aging when I was in my teens. I actually got into it because of my grandparents. Like most people, I had a personal connection to the space with my grandparents entering long-term care after I had entered my college years at American University in Washington, D.C. They were in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the city of my birth. But their aging experience wasn't what really got me excited. It was actually the demographic change that I witnessed on my drive between the two cities. What I found was, as I left D.C. to head home to Pittsburgh, the populations across the rural counties of central Pennsylvania will become a lot older, certainly a lot more white, more monocultural, and more than anything else, there were people that were my grandparents' age that were working. They were working in jobs that were considered quite difficult, jobs in the service industry, working at gas stations, even cleaning toilets at rest stops. And I found this to be such a conundrum because it didn't make sense to me that my grandparents could have such a comfortable retirement and these folks could be working so later in life. So I really set it as my life goal to unpack what was going on. And I found very quickly that the United States wasn't alone. In fact, the United States was a bit delayed against the backdrop of the world. Places like Japan, Germany, Italy were all well ahead of this country. And there was a lot that we could learn from them if we were to make the change that was needed for the future. I call this future that we're entering into the super age. It's the name of my book, which you can get on Amazon today if you'd like. I hope you do. But the super age is borrowed from a UN designation around populations. For those of you who don't know, the super age happens when at least 1 out of 5 people in a society are over the age of 65. Significant parts of Europe have already met this designation. But by the end of this decade, we can expect that 1 out of 5 people will be over the age of 65 in at least 35 different economies around the world. This is a novel period for human history. It's a novel period for our economies, and it's a novel period for our societies that we can either lean into and embrace the change, or we can ignore. If we choose to ignore, we can expect quite a bit of peril for our future. We can assume that a number of the things that we've become accustomed to, having a stable pension that's delivered in later life, enjoying national healthcare systems where health is provided for all, will start to become unraveled quite quickly. That's simply because our realities of the old days don't necessarily match the realities of the new days. People who are over the age of 65 present healthier now than they ever have in human history. They're healthier not only physically, but also cognitively, as well as their mental health. This group of people is more and more connected than they ever have been, both socially and economically. They're interested in work. And perhaps what makes them truly unique is that they're very interested in their well-being, both physical and mental, and they're curious. They're a curious bunch of folks. Every time human history has changed, and in fact, we can tie most of our longevity evolution to leaps in technology and science, typically around industrial revolution starting as early as 1760 in England, we can see that human life expectancy has leapt forward. Obviously, over the course of the last 100 years or so, we've gone through 3 of these industrial revolutions, starting in the 1870s. We've doubled life expectancy, as most of you know, but we've also changed the life course, perhaps fundamentally and perhaps forever. We're delaying things in our lives that we used to just follow along with. Things like getting married, things like buying a home. They're happening later and later. Having children, if people choose to have children at all, has been delayed quite significantly. In fact, in this country, the United States, the fastest growing group of young parents are actually people who are not so young. They're folks between the ages of 40 and 49. And that's a fundamental shift. But as we talk about the future and what the future means for us, inclusion becomes the central theme. The central theme about how we stick together as a people, how we keep our economies afloat, and how we make society more just and equitable than perhaps ever before in human history. But of course, in order to get to this point, we have to come together. And one of the ways that we can do that is by being more inclusive of all populations in our society. And this is not just limited to the work environment, where I'm going to talk about today. This is also extended to the built environment as well. And in fact, if I can tease something this morning, one of the companies that we've just spun off from the Super Age is a company called Kiba. Kiba is a company that is designed specifically around inclusion in the built environment, with a specific lens on aging populations. Because as we know, as we can all admit to if we're being truthful with ourselves, all of us will encounter some type of physical deficiency as we get older, and perhaps a mental deficiency as well. These things aren't necessarily bad. We've all had to wear a pair of glasses, most likely. By being inclusive of our differences, we can make a world that's actually more accommodating on the whole, and that can be used by a lot more people. Now, necessity is the mother of invention. I think if you take a look around at any business anywhere in the world, they're not doing much to be altruistic, but businesses do react to things that actually have a direct impact on their bottom line. In fact, it wasn't just until a few years ago that businesses really started waking up to climate change. Climate change now is a threat to a number of businesses around the world. Well, guess what else is a threat to businesses around the world? Demographic change. We're seeing shrinking numbers of younger people every year as birth rates continue to decline across Europe and Asia and the Americas. In fact, the only place that we're really seeing extended growth in birth rates are sub-Saharan Africa. You will find some exceptions to this rule, obviously the Philippines and Indonesia, perhaps even a handful of countries in Latin America. But on the whole, the vast number of wealthy countries in this world are seeing decreases in birth rates and increases in longevity, which means we're going to have a lot more older people and a lot fewer younger people. So in order to capture this demographic change and the opportunity that really exists for us as a people, we have to think about things differently. And in fact, I thought maybe it would make sense, if everyone's okay for me, to read a small segment of the book that talks about inclusion champions and where businesses can really step in. This is in the section of the book called The Drag of Ageism, and this is called Inclusion Champions. Executives of US companies often get a bad rap for their lack of integration of their companies with people of color, women, and LGBTQ+. And sometimes it's well-deserved. However, in the 1940s and 50s, some visionaries saw the value of racial integration, albeit from two very different perspectives: good business and good morals. The first perspective, which considers only the bottom line, is the path that organizations today must consider as they begin to compete in the super age, highlighting that the idea that fair employment is good for business and discrimination is bad for the bottom line. The deliberate exclusion of workers or consumers based on the color of their skin was irrational because it left potential profits on the table. The same holds true for discrimination based on age. In her 2009 book, Racial Integration in Corporate America, 1940 to 1990, Jennifer Delton of Skidmore College waded into the thorny issue of racial integration in the American workforce. She noted an advertising executive who defended his decision to hire a Black man in 1952 saying, and I quote, "I'm not a crusader. This is a cold, calculated move on my part for the dollar sign only. I was not pushed. I was not shoved. I was only moved by the dollar sign." Though there is some question as to whether inclusive hiring practices were profitable at that point in time, largely because they cost a lot to implement, the United States' biggest companies got behind the idea. Corporate America gave the green light to integration. The premonition of the growing importance of the African American market and the need to hire Black men and women to help meet the needs of these consumers early in US workplace integration is backed up by statistics today. According to the Boston Consulting Group, companies with above average diversity on their management teams report revenue 19% higher and profit margins 9% higher than companies with below average diversity. What's wild is that a whopping 83% of global executives realize that an age-diverse workforce is key to business growth and success, yet only 6% have implemented non-biased recruiting policies. Smart companies are beginning to embrace generational differences as an asset and no longer see them as a liability. They are living in the reality of the super age, a time in which there will need to be more generational parity in the workplace because it already exists in society and the marketplace. Airbnb went so far as to recruit the hotel entrepreneur and modern elder, Chip Conley, out of retirement to lead the strategy that would transform it into a hospitality company. Older workers are also the secret ingredient in product and service design and development as companies begin to scramble for insights into older consumers. Integrating and leveraging diverse areas aren't happening in the United States at the same rate they are overseas, perhaps because there isn't a clear-cut mandate, or perhaps many corporate executives perceive the US workforce and economy as being relatively young and don't see the coming skills shortages. Change is coming to the United States and other nations as the proportion of older people in the workforce continues to grow. While at AARP, I had the opportunity to work with some of the world's most innovative organizations and economies on their strategies to recruit, retain, and sustain older workers. My hallmark project, AARP Best Employers International, uncovered and rewarded the best practices of organizations as small as Bremertz in Germany, which is a specialized carpentry with 25 employees, which is located in Aachen, to the National Environment Agency, a government organization in Singapore, and BT, the leading telecom provider in the United Kingdom. These organizations, as well as others, are varied in size and shape and scope, but they all agree that age-exclusive policies are bad for business, and age-inclusive ones are good for the bottom line. In some cases, such as that of German automaker BMW in 2009, the leadership realized that the company was going to face a labor shortage within a decade, due to in large part to the country's aging workforce. Rather than bury their heads in the sand, they sought their employees' counsel on how to build a more age-friendly plant in Dingolfing. They made a modest investment that made work easier and more ergonomic. The result was improved working conditions, extended working lives, and improved production quality. BMW's inclusive factory design is now a global standard being rolled out at the company's plants worldwide. And these are just a few of the examples that are outlined in the book. Perhaps what is most challenging and most interesting about the period that we're in right now is that business is starting to wake up. But are we ready to meet business with their needs right now? Over the course of the past year, at least in the United States, we've been embroiled in what's commonly referred to as the Great Resignation. This Great Resignation has on average around 4 to 4.5 million people resigning from their jobs each month. The last month that we recorded this was January of this year. So at least 9 months straight of high resignations, historic resignations across this country. The historic resignations were made possible in part, not just because of dissatisfaction amongst workers within an economy that they see as fundamentally unfair, but because employers made the faulty decision of letting too many older workers go. In fact, in the United States, we had excess retirements of up to 3 million over the course of the pandemic. Too many people are out, and very few people have been brought back in. In fact, as most people know, it is quite common as an older worker that it takes twice as long to get back into the workforce after you've left. And oftentimes you earn half as much as you did before. Companies now, because they see the loss of these workers as a clear and present threat to their bottom line, are beginning to rethink their workforce policies in earnest. In fact, just at the end of this month, I'm speaking to the top 30 human resource executives from the top 30 US companies, businesses like Walmart, McDonald's, Walgreens, all coming together to help them understand why this shift has happened and what they can do to future-proof themselves from this loss of human talent in the near future, but also in the longer term future, because they finally see the demographic change is here and it's not going away. I am really thrilled that I had a chance to be with you this morning. I'm sure that there's probably a few questions, and I want to leave some time for that, if that's all right with the moderators. We can take a few now, but I appreciate you all being part of this great demographic change, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on what we can do better in the future.
Thank you, Bradley. That was very interesting, and that is also what I loved about reading your book. It's there's so much real life stories about what is happening right now, and that is, I always tell people, paint the picture, and that is what you're doing, and I love that. There is already I don't see questions yet in the chat, so please, if someone has a question, please put it in the chat. Yes, there need to be a lot of age-inclusive policies, and you're talking about these big organizations that you will be talking to next month. What would be your, very short, your top 3 advice that they should do now?
The number one thing any business can do to adapt to the modern era is to offer flexible work arrangements. This is the one thing that across the board, all employees want. Now, obviously, flexibility looks different for different people. So I think we're working towards a more dynamic, more individualized workplace where managers will be more empowered to work with their employees on their needs. So for example, if a middle-aged woman perhaps may need more time for caregiving responsibilities, perhaps of her adult parents and her children, she should get more flexibility in terms of her time at the office. Some people who have more tech-heavy jobs may be able to work from home more often. These are things that are good for us at the end of the day. Obviously, we need to let the dust settle coming out of the pandemic. We're in the middle of renegotiating the work week for a lot of brain jobs, jobs that require an office setting. But I think we're moving to a 3 to 4 day work week on average, where people will come and go out of the office on a regular clip. It won't necessarily be an 8-hour day anymore, but maybe 3 to 4 days you'll have to be in the office. The second thing is I think we have to be very deliberate of offering caregiving leave, and caregiving leave as being a universal right, not just for taking care of your adult parents, but also children, what we used to call maternal or paternal leave, but even caregiving leave for grandchildren. Both grandparents taking care of their grandchildren, which is a best practice out of Australia, Westpac Financial Group, and also grandchildren taking care of grandparents, which is a prevailing trend that's coming forward in the coming years. And this last one's the hardest one to get to. We really need to build workplaces that really value employees. I think the West, certainly the United States, got very much in the habit since the baby boom of having a disposable workplace, a disposable workforce. We had a lot of people that came into the workforce after the Second World War. They were followed by a small correction with Gen X, but then this massive expansion again with millennials. So we've been on this track of just having a lot of people. This also happened at the same time we were globalizing. So all of this essentially free labor that came out of developing countries in Asia is also starting to dry up. Behind the millennials is Gen Z. It's smaller by about, I think, 4 or 5 million people on whole, at least in this country. And behind that is Gen Alpha. And let me be clear, folks, Gen Alpha has put us in population decline for at least 7 years now. There are 7 years of contracting birth rates, at least in this country, with 2020 being our absolute lowest on record, on record. So as young people come into the workplace, we're not going to have that great push of people, that great cheap labor that we expected prior to, just as the boomers came into the workforce, rather. We're actually going to see things tighten up more and more. Now, there's a positive and a negative to this. Okay, let me be abundantly clear. The positive is this is going to be a golden age for workers. There's no doubt about that. There's no debating that. In fact, we're already starting to see the move towards economic equalization in this country, with a large number of unionizations happening in pretty rapid succession. In fact, the news this past week about Amazon employees unionizing in New York, Starbucks employees across the country is pretty shocking. But it's also something that happens when there is a tightening of the labor market. Employees have more say. But with this tightening of the labor market comes an increase in prices. We should expect that our prices will increase over time, but overall quality of life and quality of living will increase too. We should be able to start shrinking the wealth gap.
Thank you very much, Bradley. And I see that there's a lot of questions popping up, and we just don't have the time to answer all these questions. So I hope that, Bradley, you do still have time to look at these questions and answer some of them. Well, and one of the big things I can say about this, you all need to buy his book, because there's a lot of these questions are being answered in the book. So, but we need to dive into the breakout rooms. So, and I think a lot of the things that will also be discussed by what Avivah will be sharing and what Elizabeth will be sharing later on in this session. So let's combine it all. So I hope that you can have a look still at what is being asked Bradley, so that people know a little bit more about your work.
Sure thing. And obviously, this is an intimate enough group today. I think there's just fewer than 100 of you. Please feel free to email me directly. I try to respond to all emails. My email is bradley@thesuperage.com if I don't get to your question in the chat today.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, so if someone can, or you can type it in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in as well.
Yes, fantastic. Okay, thank you very much, Bradley. What a great start of this summit. Already so much information, but you know, there's a lot more to do, and I am going to share my screen again. And what host has disabled participation screen sharing, and Elsa B, I'm not allowed to share my screen. If you can. But in the meantime, maybe Elsa B, what we forgot in the first part was to share our poll. So I hope you will all answer this poll, and that is really connected with the title of this summit, Boomer or Bloomer, what's next? So we want to know what you think that you are. Are you that boomer? And don't only look at age and think, okay, I'm 55, so am I or am I not a boomer? But what do you feel? Are you that boomer or are you that bloomer? So Elsa B, if you can pop up the poll, that would really be great. Elsa B.
It's up. They're answering the poll.
Oh, okay. I don't see it. Okay.
Waiting for a few more people. Okay. I think everybody that's at the desk has answered the poll now.
So if you can also share the results, because I don't see not the poll. So
can you all see the results?
Yeah, I can see the results there.
I can see.
okay, so can you share it with me, because I cannot see it.
It's boomers are 6%, bloomers are 74%, and don't know yet are 19%.
Oh, okay.
It's a good result.
That's good result. That means these are people, you know, the change makers, you know, those are who are already in the front line. Good. Okay, so I hope I can share my screen now. Yes, I can. So we are going to move into the breakout rooms, and that is something that we shared. This is going to be very interactive because we want to make you think, but we also want to hear your voice. So what is the key question for today? And of course, that reflects everything that we are doing for this multi-generational workforce. What does it take to create a multi-generational work environment where people of all age groups feel welcome, valued, fulfilled, and challenged? Couple of rules. Or what we intend to do is to create a safe environment where people feel free to express themselves. There are no wrong answers and there's no judgment. So please open up, and we want you to think, we want to hear your voice. So it's not going to be the facilitator. They are only there to guide you through this process. So Elsa B has already assigned those who are facilitating. So she will now push that button to move into the breakout rooms, and we will all end up there randomly. So Elsa B.
How long will we be in the breakout, Ingun?
We'll be back at 4.
20 minutes. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. Okay, it might again be me, but I don't see anything happen.
No, there's no breakout coming up.
No, I don't think anybody's gone into a breakout room yet. Ah, here we go.
Yeah, there it's
Here
happening.
we go.
How about you? We are going to talk about it after a couple of sessions that we're going to do first, but we had a great conversation going on there and really opening up minds. So that was good. So love to hear after Avivah's talk what the other groups have been doing. So. And I think I did see that Avivah joined. Yes, there she is. Good to see you, my dear. I am going to share my screen for a moment so that I can introduce you properly. Share. So it's really great. Oh, these are the facilitators. That is good. Yes, our next keynote, and we have tried to make it as diverse as possible today, this afternoon, because of course, you know, there's so much going on in this field, but you want to make it, you know, the speakers you bring on stage, that it's not just going to be slides and all kinds of numbers and things, but you really want the real stories, what is going on. So we're really great that Avivah Wittenberg-Cox agreed that she would be here this afternoon. I really appreciate it. So when you, on her bio, the first thing, she's a mix of a writer, an entrepreneur, change agent, coach, and consultant. Well, that's already a lot. But then, she's an Ali Fellow at Harvard right now. She's in the midst of reinventing herself. She will probably share more about it. Focused on longevity, gender differences in aging, and navigating later life transitions in third and fourth quarters. So we just heard someone mention that we're having 3 spaces in time, but we do actually already have 4. So that's really interesting. She's an author and writer. She used to be for, I don't, maybe still HBR and Forbes. She's focusing on writing late work from recreation to recreation. Interesting title. Thriving 200 through life's 4 quarters. And she has a great newsletter where you can hear the stories of her life and what is going on, Elderberry. So it's great to assign on that, to register for that newsletter. And she was just awarded 40 over 40, the world's most inspiring women. And we were surprisingly, I thought surprisingly, both on that list. And actually, Elizabeth, who will speak later on, she was one of the members of the jury. So that was really great. So I'm going to stop talking. Avivah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ingrid, and lovely to see so many of my friends, and I suspect some of my nominees for that last award here on this call. Not calling anybody out, but my thanks go out to you nonetheless. And some of my very favorite pathfinders on this journey who've been accompanying me. So lovely to see you. Can I share a few slides? Because I don't have slides like slides. I use slides like pictures. I really like pictures. So if I can do this, I will help my story go along with pictures. So I think I woke up to this whole issue of age when I left a husband at 50. This was my big tumble into late life, adulthood, reading all these books about the second half of life and aging and what it meant and why were there all suddenly all these silver divorces in 50s and 60s? Why were so many women leaving men at this age? What was going on? And I spent a few years writing this book, Late Love, Mating in Maturity, which a lot of book writing, I don't know if you guys write books, but a lot of it is therapy, right? It's just a way to figure out what is going on in your own life. So that's really where I got very interested in this topic. And yeah, started reading all about how we get 3 extra decades of life and what are we going to do with them? And I heard a lot, and the way a lot of people think about this topic is that all this extra time that we're getting, wonderful book called Extra Time, kind of gets tagged on to the end. So we imagine that we're going to be old for longer. But what I am realizing as I explore this and as I see it in my own life and my children's life in particular, is these longer lives change every bit of life. So my young kids in their 20s have this really expanded decade where they're not settling down and getting married and having kids in their 20s, what a generation ago we might have done. They are delaying all these things and using the 20s as a time of exploration, self-definition, making mistakes, traveling around. And what I found so interesting as I moved into my 50s was I echoed that. I repeated it completely in my 50s and 60s. I was post-children, empty nest. And here I was, what am I going to do with the rest of my life growing when I become a grown-up? And what does being a grown-up actually mean? And I found it to be a time of incredible liberation, romance. I fell in love, I remarried, peak career decades, which I was not expecting. I mean, I wrote my first book at 47, and then that opened up a whole world of impact and exploration. And also alignment with my children and a whole younger generation who I felt were going through a very parallel exploration, and that they were incredibly shocked to see me going through the same thing. So I think how we look at lives has really changed, and that these entirely new phases are what is shocking many of us. And I think we don't necessarily understand when we personally are going through it, how it's not a personal issue. Everybody is going through this, mostly because lives are getting so much longer. And so I've been writing a lot about this idea that I summarize kind of colloquially, I won't even try that word. What I discovered is women kind of grow up at 50. This is the age of adulthood for women. This is when we begin to become who we really are, which I think probably most of you on this call would agree with. It's a bit of a shock to anybody under 50 to hear that most of that, what I now call Q2, or the second quarter of life from 25 to 50, is just prep. That's just the foundations. You get married, you get a family, you have children. Those are the bedrock of life. but then what you're interested in, what you want to change, what you want to learn, how you want to impact the world. For a lot of women, we discover that post 50, which is interesting because most companies, of course, aren't at all adjusted to that particular reality. They want to get rid of most people over 50, not start leveraging their skills and talents. And I think the companies I've worked with over the last 25 years on gender balancing are actually really beginning to discover that these more senior women are some of their best talent, and they're really finding that different career patterns can serve not only older women, but young millennials and parents of all genders. So this article made a bit of noise about how we are actually models of what aging workforces can look like. And so the last 20 years of my life has been focused on gender balancing the business world. And now I'm shifting or layering on top of that this whole idea of generational balance, that workforces are going to break into what Peter Drucker actually prophesized a couple of decades ago would be two halves of the workforce, the over 50s and under 50s, who would have very different motivations, time scales, pay requirements, all kinds of things. And this is almost completely off the corporate radar. It's just coming in now. Japan, by the way, is going 50-50 in its entire population next year. It'll be the first country, not just workforce, but the entire country is going 50% over and under 50, which has so many implications. It's kind of mind expanding. And so now, yes, I'm spending my year here looking at the overlays of these two issues and what opportunities it might open up, not only on the talent side, but equally, if not more, on the market side. What does that look like? What does it mean? And so this old, you guys are all fluent in this kind of language, the old 3-step stage of life that Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott so effectively called out as obsolete, is still the way most managers, leaders, and companies still manage careers, right? And my drawing of what careers now look like is more like this, right? We go round and round and round, hopefully learning and maturing and doing it a little bit better each time. But increasingly, we will be educated multiple times. We will have multiple careers, and may also have multiple relationships. And being able to do that serenely, as though that's the norm and not some weird, dysfunction in you personally, I think is an important part of coming to terms and building what I call transition skills. We have to get much more comfortable and skilled at shifting and transitioning through these different phases. So this was my 60th birthday card that I had some enjoyment doing. It's also that we need to pause occasionally in these life quarters as we move through and sort of harvest the past before we rush into the future. So I find a lot of people upon retirement seem to think they're going to get through this transition of what am I going to do next in a matter of months, when it's actually a matter of years, as most transitions are. And so I think it's very helpful to remember what are the big phases, to look back and see what some of the patterns are with mature eyes to understand. Again, I mean, we need to do this repeatedly, right? But at 60, I think we have a very different view of who we are, what we've experienced, what patterns are we repeating, what do we want to let go of, and who do we want to become, and what do we want to do next? And with a great recognition, I think always, of what I call my life support systems, are who are the people who really accompany you along the road that you want to keep. So my 60th gift to myself was not only that card, it was also a year at Harvard. I got into this advanced leadership initiative some of you may know. There's another one at Stanford called the Stanford DCI, and there are now 4 other universities in the US offering these kind of transition years, which I'm finding absolutely delightful. I'm writing about it in this newsletter if you're interested, a week-by-week play of what I'm learning and what it's all about. But my God, I tell you, I just bought a bicycle a couple of weeks ago and I feel like a kid again. I'm bicycling to school. I'm hanging out with all these new friends. It literally shaves decades off your life and gives you a whole host of new ideas, new people to play with, who are in the same kind of engaged transition work that probably most of you all are. And my challenge is, how do we democratize this? Harvard, Stanford, absurd that there are only 2 places doing this. We need this everywhere, cheaper, more accessible, and again, much more normalized. And I think we're going to need this kind of sabbatical or rejuvenation year, not just a couple of times in life, but probably ideally something like every decade. So my map of life, people are talking about the new roadmap of life. I was intrigued to see Stanford's big publication with a great title, right? A new roadmap of life, but I didn't think there was a roadmap in it. So here's my, I'm a big simplifier. So here was my now vision of life, and I kind of ironically call it the 4 quarters because it maps to the language and framing of the business world and all those finance guys, right? Q1, Q3, and did you have a good Q3, and what are your results, right? And that it very much helps not only people to realize that this whole Q3, that if I look at this call, most of us are in, is entirely new and has to be thought about and leaned into and redesigned. But it also really helps the younger people in Q2 I talk to realize that they don't have to do everything right then. The impossible crunch of those Q2ers trying to parent and elder care and manage these 24/7 careers was always an impossible ask. And now actually longer lives are giving us a different invitation to pace. And I think part of this great resignation, which actually I think was more of a great retirement, is some of the post-COVID pandemic reactions and understanding that life can be run quite differently. And the more time I spend thinking about Q3, the more I think we also need to work on preparing and leading into Q4, which is largely uncharted terrain. And that's what I'm up to. If you want to read anything more about it, I just collated a lot of my writing and thinking about this in a way that I can at least find it into a website that I just started called Thriving to 100. And my view on all this is to look at it at multiple levels because it impacts everything, right? It impacts us individually. There's a very interesting slant that I'm obviously looking at on couples in later life and how they have to rejig their roles and agreements. Companies are just opening up to this. So the huge future of work issues around aging, and countries, the demographics of countries, most of them are shrinking, and pensions are going to go crazy. Big gender gaps in pension, endless issues in each of these. And I'm like a kid in a candy store. I can't quite choose amongst them all. So I try and do them all and explore, and very happy to stay connected with any of you who are in any of those spaces because it's fascinating. And that's it. That was my quick story of, did I do that in 10 minutes?
Yes, you did great. Fantastic. Yeah, it's a great story, Avivah. And I think we all recognize what is going on and what is going on in your life and what is happening to most of us. And I know there will be a lot of questions, but the program is kind of tight, but let's see. I really want to start with a question myself. And that is, I was watching one of your TEDx talks, your TED Talks this morning, from gender to generation. That is really your refocus. And there was still a lot about, you know, what was going on gender, because that is what happened first before what we're shifting into now. And one of the things is what you mentioned is stop fixing those women. You know, if you want to change things, it's not about empowering women. You have to empower leadership. So if you look at the situation right now in organizations, who do we need to stop fixing and who do we need to focus on?
Well, I've been repeating it for a long time now, so I hope we're slowly moving on, not entirely, but we are in very still male-designed companies, businesses, and they seem to, and we've made the mistake, and I'll be controversial here, of bundling women and gender balance under diversity. So that it becomes one small issue among many, whereas I frame this as the rise of women in the 20th century is one of the most shape-shifting events of our collective lives. I call that the 4 Ws that are revolutionizing our world: web, weather, world, and women. So tech, climate, geopolitics, and yes, the rise of women is destabilizing social issues, geopolitics. A lot of these autocrats that are rising as a backlash to the rise of women. And companies want to see this as a little diversity issue. It just doesn't work, right? And they say, oh, well, yeah, of course, we want to empower those poor women who don't seem to be making it to the top. So why don't we, create a women's network and let the women talk to each other, and maybe that'll help their confidence and they could get promoted. The absurdity of what is and how this topic is seen is partly our fault. I mean, I hate to claim this, but it's women who've been asking for women's networks and mentoring and blah, 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 that they have gotten, right? Because often it's younger women asking for who don't see how the systems are run. And by the time they're old enough to have figured out how the systems actually run, that's when they're able to lobby for change, and much more systemic change. And the issue is really, I think that leaders are, in my now 15 years of discussing with them, much less resistant to gender balancing than we think, but they are much more unskilled than we think too. They don't know how to do this. They don't know anything about it. They think it's a little issue that, got to lean into these women a bit, give them a little ledge up. They have no idea that what they actually have to do is transform their entire system, their culture, their values, and their leadership criteria. So it's a much bigger elephant, and that shocks people, and they're not quite skilled. So yes, a lot more investment in the 21st century on helping men generally adapt to more gender balanced customers and talent, and really help skill up leaders on how to pilot that adaptation than anything to do with women. I always tell leaders, if you never say the word women again, you're on the right track. Talk about customers, talent, balance, leaders. You don't need to make it about women anymore.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And now it adds up to age. Don't talk about age anymore. We're just one group, and we have to embrace what is available to us in organizations, whatever the age. And it can be gender, it can be age, it can be LGBTQ, all cultures, religions, etc. It's such a lovely diversity that we can bring to the table and have such a more interesting conversation, find more innovative solutions if we are able to do that.
If I can just argue, Inge, in one moment, I don't fight for diversity. I mean, I do on a separate subject, but no, I fight for gender balance. I want women and men at every power table in the world, running every country in the world. And diversity will come from that. But drowning women under this diversity umbrella, that all diversities are equal and equally impactful, I think is part of what women have done to ourselves, is to misframe this as one minority issue among many. It's a numbers and a power game. And I think we got to get with it to claim the power that we now represent or should be claiming in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, Avivah, there are some questions in the chat. So if you would like to go through them, we have to move to the next subject. We're really, really, really grateful that you've been able to join us. And I know you had some other speaking engagements also this afternoon. So great that you can join us today here also with this Summit Boomer or Bloomer. Thank you, Avivah. And we're going to the next moment, and that is just ground a moment. You know, it's also about getting, you know, moving through the next stages of our life. It's also about healthy aging. It is also about consciousness. And we invited Viola Edwards here, and Viola actually is also one of the Wise Move thought leaders. And I am going to share my screen again for a short introduction. Yes, here she is, Viola, and I've been working together with her on quite some different projects now over quite some years. Multi-awarded personal and corporate advisor and mentor, transcultural psychotherapist. She's a breathwork mentoring trainer, a social entrepreneur, CEO and co-owner of Crit Academy. She's the author of Breathing the Rhythm of Success and the Amazon bestseller, Who Makes the Bed? That already is a very interesting title. I already mentioned that she's one of my my advisors at the Wise Move Society Moving to the Future. We're really happy that you could join us today from south of France this time. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love to be in this group. I enjoy our breaking room and enjoy the talk this morning. And I want to say here at my 63, such a privilege to be Asian. Especially I grew up with the shadow of death here. My dad passed away when he was 29. So every day of life for me is a day to honor. There is an old tango that said it's not the same to live than to honor life. And this is what I try to do. And every day of my life. And also breath work, when I discover into my love for therapy, psychotherapy, psychology, since I'm 11 years old. And I shared before that I started my life my working life at the age of 13. So I've been young for so many years that I'm sometimes surprised of being with the other group now, and with a big smile that I have this privilege to be here. So something that helped me to go through the changes of life and the changes of country and the changes of languages, because I have migrated several times in my life, and many of those times is to start again. It was the discovery of the conscious breathing. These things that we take with us everywhere we go, cheapest therapy ever, and how we can do it consciously. So as we started this event today, and we heard each other, and we know that it's so important to know what kind of personality is our personality. What is the thing that make us really inspire us to do things? What are the things that slow us down, and so forth? So there is several kind of breathing exercise that we can find that really, really suit you and really, really suit you at this time of your life. So we're going to approach one for those people who are calm, who are grounded, who are posed. I live with one of those. My husband is like pose. So it's very important for this kind of people to have pause conscious breathing. For example, let's go breathing from the nose and inhale as deep as you can, but without hurting yourself. So it doesn't have to be like, no, it has to be like I'm making a little bit of noise that you can hear me, and then exhale from the nose as long, as deep and slow as you can. So it's like a feeling that you have all the time of the world to do your breathing exercise. Let's do it again. And exhale without pushing. And do it again. And you will see as you do it slowly, slowly, the rib cage is going to be open more and more, and the chest too. And exhale, please, from the nose. And of course, you can do these exercises in a boardroom, wherever you are, without noise, and just looking at the other face, and just put your intention in your breathing. And then we will do this cocktail breathing, like nothing is happening, but it's like just to be grounded, just to be focused that you're here, you're now, you have the time, and you have choices, because you have the choice to focus on your breathing. And you can do it like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, as many times as you can. It's important, and also it gives you the backup that whoever you are, you need time, you need pause. This is a good breathing exercise for you. Now there is another group of people who are on the go almost all the time, even when they don't have to go to any place. Yeah, who's in this group? A little bit hyper, doesn't matter how old we are. Yes, put your hand up. Yes, a little bit hyper. And then I go and tell you, now breathe calmly, and and as soon as I said that, you feel a little bit of resistance. So let's do another exercise, which is 4 times fast, and like from the chest. And the 5th time is slow, as the one we just did, yeah? So it honors your on the go, but at the same time, it gives you the opportunity to slow at your own rhythm, yeah? Shall we do it? Like 4 times fast and 1 time slow. And we can do this exercise 4 sets of those. Let's do 1 set, okay? So it is like I'm going. And the long, slow one. Let's do it again. 4 fast. I confuse number, and the slow one. You can do this one without noise too, like in a cocktail way, nodding your head and listening. Nobody will notice, but that will give you good oxygenation. You do it 4 sets, and you give you good oxygenation, and at the same time, engage you with your roots. Now, there are some people who are on the go, but also very intense. Who are those? Like on the go, loud, intense, extroverted. Who are those? Yes. Then let's do, yes, yes, Avivah. So let's do one that is much faster. We're gonna breathe very fast. Let's do like 7 breathing very fast, like. And then we're gonna pause as much as you can. Just pause and count when you're imposed. Okay, I'm gonna use my glasses just to see you a little bit better. And let's go. 1, 2, 3. And let go. How's the heartbeat? And then let's go again. Again, fast. Are you ready to go again? Would you like to do it once more? Yeah, okay. So as fast as you can, again, not hurting yourself, as fast as you can. Let's do this time fast, 10 breathing fast, and then we pause, okay? 1, 2, 3. Pause. And whenever you want, you breathe again. Notice your heartbeat. Some of you could sweat a little bit. Maybe some of you feel a little bit dizzy, but you're sitting, no worries. There is no worries, and we can do that, and we can add to the time of pause without hurting yourself. And then when you finish this, you go back to the first one that we did, or the slow one, or the 4 fast, 1 slow, whatever your type of personality and activity wants. The most important thing with the breathing exercise is that you own it, and you can take it with you wherever you go. And it gives you a chance to expand your radio of proactivity. Because being at this age, being younger, or being in the mid-age, or being a little bit older, we need to be able to really own our space. And life will surprise us, being in the airport or in a taxi, or losing a job, or winning a job, or being in an interview. And even some people like me, that we have our own company since many, many years, but we still go to interviews because we as consultant, we need to interview our client, and depend of the size of it. Sometimes we also get nervous about it, or a TED talk, or another talk, or sometimes we think we have it, we kind of own it and we manage it, and then we have to do it in another language, or we need to learn another language. So there is so many opportunity in life that we need to be just there, owning our space in our own pace. I'm so happy to be with you once more. And please contact me for anything related to breathwork, or consultancy, or psychotherapy, or whatever I can do. With you this month. On the 2nd of April, on the 4th of April, I have the birthday of being working for 50 years. So I become 63, but I'm working for 50 years. So in those years, I have accumulated certain experience, and I'm sure we can share and we can talk about one subject with you. Thank you again, Ingun, for creating this space, and all the team. And see you next time. I'm going to stay here with you. If there's any question, I will answer on the chat. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Viola. And, if you start working early, you add even extra time to your life. So, yes, thank you very much. I always love your breathing exercises. It's really grounds you, makes you so much more conscious of what you're doing. So really something we need. Thank you. I really want to, because we are running a little bit late, and I want to discuss with Elizabeth, because I don't know if we do the breakout rooms reflections first, if you are still okay with your time. Elizabeth?
I am, yeah, thank you.
Yes, okay, good. Then we'll do that first. Thank you, because it is more also input for your part. So
Yes.
I would like to share those coming from the breakout rooms, so that the facilitators in the breakout rooms, if you can share a bit of what has been going on there, that would really be great. Well, the questions, we've already seen them. So maybe I'll just, okay, Robert Vos, how about you? What happened in your room?
Well, actually, Viola was doing the facilitation.
Okay.
But I can't comment if Viola, are you ready to do so?
It's okay for me that you comment, dear.
Robert, good.
Okay. Well, in our group, we had an interesting conversation, learning from each other, instead of finding one solution for all. You know, it's not one size fits all, but to learn from each other. An important remark came from Robert Baker to find stakeholders within the company, within the corporation, especially investors, to convince them that love, care, and especially our wisdom is of great value to these corporations, even to their bottom lines. It is all about attitude on both sides, actually. You know, the corporation as well as the elderly, the 50 plus people. Another important remark was ask for help whenever needed. Actually, I forgot the example, but you know, asking for help whenever you need that. And then obviously the important help we get from technology nowadays. You know, addressing fatigue or things like that. It's technology that can really help us deal with that. You know, whatever issue we may have, a mental issue or a physical issue, technology can certainly help, and companies should be aware of applying this technology for the 50 plus generation. I think that's about it. Did I forget something, Viola, Robert?
Yeah, and the honor and the pleasure of being with Jean Hively. She is 9 years old and she's actively working, and she was giving us, well, we were very interested in having advice and how she make it in a certain area. And here she is. It's a privilege to have been with you, Jean.
An example. Yeah.
Yes.
On my way to 100-year life.
Yes.
Yes.
And still running the Pass It On network. Great. The next.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much, Robert. Nicolette, where are you?
I'm here. Yes, hi. I think I made a little bit of a summary. I think in our group, it was all filled. How can we feel welcomed and valued and fulfilled? I think one of the main themes there was, it's a bit like what Jim Conley always says, be a mentor and an intern at the same time. With other words, we feel welcome if we're integrated, but it's very much we have to work together. So I think reverse mentoring, that is actually key to be able to be in an environment with young and different generations. And also really liked, there was a comment by, I think it was Julia, the social environment. So you can feel welcome as, let's say, 50-plusser, but if all your colleagues, you can work together nicely, but the interests outside work might be different. So it might be nice to do both ways, what would suit everyone instead of just one generation. I thought it was quite a good one. And obviously an organization where we value human skills. Think about communication, very much one-to-one, so not just talking to a phone call, but have that connection with people. And the big word together, I just wrote down as well, togetherness. And the changes each of us in the room thought we could make was influence companies, be the influencer and talk about it, and connect with companies who share the same values and visions, and speak to all generation and not just try to stay in your own comfort generation. So I think that was in a nutshell what our group was talking about. And of course, there was not enough time to discuss everything, but yeah, that was our group.
Yes, thank you, Nicolette. There's so much to share that it's almost impossible to do that in a couple of minutes. So we need another conference to talk more, to go deep. Yeah. Mary Jane, how about you?
Yeah, I'll try and be really succinct. Comments that came up, regulatory aspects, forced retirement, the justifications of keeping somebody on after the allotted age, 67 and 4 months, was just not in the best interest of the company. So, but they had the out because of the regulatory aspect of it. That there's one of the attendees in our group in the breakout session sees conflicts between age groups. So again, these conversations need to really start happening, and I'm calling them again courageous conversations, and they also need to happen for people who are going to be retiring to find out what their needs are. You need the top-down buy-in was something that came out, reverse mentorships, also flexibility. We spent a fair bit of time on what that means and it will mean something different to all age groups. Addressing the health and physical needs of all the age groups, all generations. So yeah, that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you, Mary Jane. And what we are going to do afterwards is, of course, you know, to collect all the things that have been said and make sure that that you all receive more of the information that has been discussed. Mary Jane, Robert, Cecile.
Thank you, Ingun. Yes, in our group, we got caught in a little conversation about elder and the interpretation of elderhood, how it can resonate in certain environments as negative, but also as positive. And some of us framed it as I'm being framed as old and I'm being out of the workspace, or I can own it as a presence. And the consensus we really came around is that it's so important, specific. We were a group of women, so we talked specifically about women, to own our presence, the elder we get, to be really in the here and now, and to bring the rest and peace within the workspace, thanks to our experience, thanks to our life experience, work experience, and all the knowledge that we've acquired over the years that we've been in the workforce. And that can be very different, because in our group we had people that were executive coaches, but also yoga teachers that work on purpose. So how to frame the purpose of the 50+ generation is also an interesting conversation to have. And personally, I'm very much in favor of have the intergenerational dialogue to learn from each other as well. That's about us, I think. Anybody wants to add something, please do.
Okay, thank you. Well, I know that you wrote an interesting book, Cecile, on that topic, intergenerational dialogue. So we'll hear more about that later. Mike?
I was not the facilitator in our group. I think it was Tatiana.
Oh, Tatiana.
Or am I putting Tatiana on the spot? I'm sorry. I was switched groups. Sorry. That's why I came in the middle of a conversation.
Okay. So is Tatiana still here? And I don't see her. Anyone else of that group?
I can step in if you want, Ingen.
Yeah, yes.
We had basically a super interesting discussion, and we tried to find some, collect some ideas. So some of us are using midlife rethink tools. One of them being reciprocal mentoring and not reverse mentoring. It's about also recommending to have, for the ones who are no more in the workforce and wish to rejoin it, blind applications help. So what about making that the standard? That is in some countries. Also challenge the 50+ on training and upskilling, basically, and empowering them to do so and to keep basically their own development top of mind. And having a talent manager for 50+, not only for the 40, and remove our own barriers on our own development, because we are the first one to basically slow down ourselves.
I like that. Already very practical, so that's good, but also, you know, remove our own barriers. Yes, absolutely. What can you do starting tomorrow? So that was great. Thank you, Gael, for stepping in. And then there's Alain.
Hello.
I know it's Alan, but
I know.
we discussed, well, I really like the Alain version.
So do I, Igor. Thanks very much. Yeah, well, first observation in our group, I guess, was that you know, none of our group was actually in a multi-generational organization. So we were all outside of these big multi-generational organizations, either as casualties, perhaps, or as voluntary absentees from those organizations. So there we are. So we were kind of from the outside looking into those things. But you know, we did note also that you know, many organizations may have policies, but those policies don't necessarily feed through into practice. So we talked earlier, I think, in one of the presentations about having policies in place. Well, policies is probably not enough, which brings us on to the question of who is responsible for enacting these welcoming, inclusive, intergenerational workplaces. And we brought up a question, you know, if people feel that they've been squeezed out of organizations, who's doing the squeezing? Is it actually older workers who are excluding older workers rather than younger workers who are excluding older workers? Which brings us on to the whole idea of, you know, perhaps in the search for the, you know, the leadership in a common way to express by Avivah, you know, the leadership dialogue is coming from the older people and perhaps maybe power-based, and in the search for the new blood. I notice is it Elizabeth has a vampire poster on his wall, on her wall. Well, it's possible to look through the organization through a vampiric lens and the constant search for fresh blood. So is it the elders in the organization who are creating this whole image that the organization needs to be new and fresh? And so we actually need to work with the older leadership in the organization, perhaps, to create that space for older people. So if other members of the group would like to add their perspective, please do. No?
Okay,
well,
job well done, Alan. Very good. Thank you very much. And I love that perspective. And that's great conversation material. Who is doing the squeezing? Yeah, I just as a title, that would be the next conference, I think. So that's the same if, yeah, I don't know if Bradley is still here, but one of the chapters in his book is also about, you know, how we look at the aging population is all as actually brought on by ourselves. You know, we have been doing, when we were in our 20s, we were talking about the older population, and we, you know, we needed the attention at that time where we were young. We were important. And now that we are moving into that older generation, we still feel that we are the ones that are very important. But, you know, the way that we look at that older generation is actually years ago brought on by ourselves. So we have some work to do. Anyhow, did I forget one group? Oh, there were quite some nice things. So I'd love to get the material, that's the things that you've written down. So please send that to us so that we can, in the end documents, that we can share a bit about what has been going on in these breakout rooms. So, well, Elizabeth, and it's so good that you have been here from the start, so that you have seen what is going on and what we have been talking about. And well, look at it from your perspective. And just to introduce you, and I think I wrote your name wrong, Keener.
You said it right. Yeah. You wrote it wrong, but it's okay.
It's the other way around. So Vice President Capgemini, and that is also something that I learned here. For me, that's Capgemini, but that is the very Dutch. So Capgemini Invent. and most focus on enterprise transformation. So that is what we are talking about here. She's an evangelist for workforce transformation, passionate about both equity and a multi-generational workforce, board member Nerdy Girl Success and Polaris, Forbes HR Council, Forbes Women Forum, author of Good Girls Don't Make History, another great title. And she was one of the members of the jury of the 40 over 40, the world's most inspiring women, also with Robert Baker, who is also today here in this session. So, Elizabeth, a lot has been said, a lot has been done, but we love to hear your perspective. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you all and be with you mostly over the past 2 hours. I had to take a detour to 1 or 2 calls along the way, but caught most of the presentations, so thank you. I just wanted to share a little bit of background on my side and some things that resonated with me as far as what I heard from some of the other speakers. I also lost my father when he was 40 years old and I was 16. So I also come to my life and my work with the perspective of being grateful for every single day. And it was interesting to hear someone else who had lost a loved one so young and how that frames your worldview and your mindset ultimately for your entire life. So I had a great appreciation of that and also appreciate the fact of shifting our mindsets to having second, third, and fourth chapters of our life. So like this vampire poster behind me is a film poster because I started my career in education in film and filmmaking. I went to film school, worked in advertising and marketing for very many years, and then eventually transitioned after owning my own company for 8 years to a position at IBM because I was becoming so obsessed with technology. I wanted to understand data and AI and everything that was happening in those spaces. And that led me down the path that resulted in me being at Capgemini today. Within Capgemini and my role, I'm focused on workforce and organization. So everything that we're talking about here as far as the era that we're living in is one of being in a cross-generational workforce. And with that cross-generational workforce, we need to be conscientious every day of creating cross-generational empathy. And we can feel that very astutely on the employee side. I also have a number of companies coming to us right now asking for help as far as helping their salespeople to know how to navigate a cross-generational customer base as well. So it happens on both sides of the equation, both on our lives as employees, as well as our lives as customers or consumers. So it's interesting to see this at the moment. And as I was thinking about this conversation this week, I also came across a quote from David Bowie, which I had never heard of before. But he was a pretty insightful fellow. So it didn't surprise me to hear him say this, but the quote is, aging is an extraordinary process whereby you become the person you always should have been. And that also really stuck with me as far as not everyone realizes as we age, we step into ourselves and grow into ourselves even more. And I also made the decision in the beginning of the pandemic to finally bite the bullet and get an executive MBA. So that's something else that I am 46 years old myself, but will be graduating next month with an executive MBA. And that was like part of my beginning of my next chapter. And where I felt like I wanted to upskill and reskill myself. And I'm also the mother of a 9 and a 12-year-old. And without even saying anything to them, their study habits and their own personal diligence to school over the past year has like doubled. Like I went to bed last night and my son was still in bed, like studying late at night. And like my kids are so focused on school because they have seen me so focused on school for the past year and a half. So it's remarkable as well when we take advantage of the fact that, you know, we can continue to educate and reinvent ourselves again and again, and the impact that that has on the people in our lives, because it is all a matter of perception, and we can choose to be and feel old, or we can choose to perpetually reinvent as many times as we can. So within the consulting work I do, we're very focused on thinking and helping companies think through how they reinvent work models, how they reinvent the physical workplace, like, you know, what do offices and structures look like, reinventing the workforce, which definitely resonates with how we might think about using technology, thinking about reverse mentoring, some of the things that we discussed, reciprocal mentoring. And I loved the notion and the comment around the need for talent managers for 50 plus. I think that's something, when I think about that from an enterprise or organizational standpoint, that I think is missing from a lot of people's thought process these days. And all of this can add up to reinventing HR, so you can create ideally a more empathetic and agile organization that, you know, focuses on human potential at every age. And when we think about how we typically do our employee segmentation and things of that nature, that's something that probably should be more profoundly noted or demonstrated in the process. So it gave me a lot of food for thought hearing the conversation over the past few minutes. And, you know, I'm very, very grateful to be a part of this community and introduced to you all, because this has been a fascinating conversation. And I know we're up against the top of the hour, so I'll keep my remarks curbed for now, but thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, there's some great topics, and I do believe that organizations can add a lot to what they're already doing to change the workspace, the work models, the workforce, etc. I've also been listening to one of your interviews online, and there you talk about improve that employee experience. I love that. So how can you improve employee experience, looking from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the beginnings of that needs to start with a lot of listening. And I bring the approach to the work that I do is really driven by empathy and design thinking. And while I was at IBM, I became very immersed in design thinking and use that as a tool that I bring into the people in the HR space to really create a profound level of understanding before we come up with any sort of recommendations or take action. So I think that the need to create, I talked a little bit about this a moment ago, not only employee segmentation, but getting into personas and archetypes and really understanding, you know, who are the people that compose this organization, and how do I create, even if I'm in a company of 300,000 people, something that feels like a highly personalized and you know, bespoke to them experience, even if it's not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We have time for one or two questions for Elizabeth. Anyone? Robert, I see. Yeah, Robert.
I'd be very happy to ask a question.
Yes. Yeah. Avivah.
Internal gig economies generally, do you see this as a huge potential for getting and keeping the older half in the workplace, or a huge risk to us all?
I think it is a huge potential, in fact, and I have seen just within our client base a lot of global multinational companies looking to build that capability where maybe not all of them are nimble enough to have a setup to have this more flexible gig economy workforce. So that's been something that we're hearing a lot just since the beginning of this year, that the global community has been sharing our approaches to help consult organizations in that. I think that will open up a huge opportunity for a multi-generational and specifically older side of the workforce to be able to, come in and be still quite engaged, if not in a full-time capacity, but by leveraging the gig economy. So absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Avivah, would that answer your question? Good.
Absolutely.
Anyone
A
else?
note of optimism in the general gloom.
One more. Anyone jumping in?
Yeah, just one quick question, if I may, Elizabeth, about how you see new models of work. I mean, there's been some discussion around whether, we'll all be working for companies in 10 or 20 years' time, whether we'll be working, as kind of almost freelancers on a platform that's driven by blockchain and that kind of stuff. Do you see that as a significant trend, really? Or, I mean, like, would that give us the freedom that we all want? Or is that actually a road to kind of ruin in a way?
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept, and I've heard many people talk about that and some really great podcasts. I think there was an HBR one on this topic that was thinking, could you split your time 50%, 50%, like say you're a hot commodity, you're an amazing data scientist, and you could work equally for this 50% for this airline, 50% for this bank, and maybe they have a partnership with each other, so they're not even in like any sort of competition. So how would that not be beneficial, both probably to the individual talent as well as the companies? And I think some of the barriers to that, which I otherwise see could be a mutually successful construct, is at least in the US, so much of our benefits in healthcare is tied to one FTE employer. So we need there to be more flexibility in the surrounding benefits and perks and how those are administered to employees, as well as things like how Social Security is tracked and everything. The system, if you will, is designed around this notion of a full-time employee to be able to, collect from health benefits to Social Security to other things. Like, you must be in this category in order to accumulate these benefits or have health insurance and the like. So it's quite interesting when you think about it, because the picture you just painted, I think would be, pretty amazing for a lot of people and even a lot of companies, not just from looking at it from the employee side. It's just that the system surrounding it would need to change.
Yeah, thanks.
I see Cecile has one burning question. That's the last one. Cecile.
Thank you, Ingun. The question I would like to ask is regarding intergenerational empathy and how we can also tackle at the same time also the white privilege question. Because as I look at the screen today, most of us, the ones that show themselves, are of white origin. And I think in the intergenerational conversation, automatically, there should be also some kind of conversation held about the white privilege. How do you see that, Elizabeth?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I was part of a recent panel and conversation about this with the diversity and inclusion corporate leader. And she asked people to reflect on their personal network and like who they're mentoring, who they're talking to most frequently. And if you don't see diversity there, then there is something wrong. And it's your responsibility, everyone's responsibility, to do something about that. And I think that's still remains to be a profound challenge and something in many countries around the world that individuals need to be, I think, much more aggressive and assertive and not just recognizing, like the recognition is the first step, but then going and doing something about it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was recently in an online meeting with the Life Planning Network, and that it was addressed as what is happening with with this group. So really interesting topic, Cecile, and also something that we do need to discuss and address. Thank you. I am going to, this was the last question for Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us today, and really good that you looked at it from your perspective, working in these transforming organizations. So thank you very much. I am going to share my screen just shortly. We are already over the hour, so let's just finish off. There is one poll that we want to be doing. So that is if Elsa B, if you can activate that. Who will lead the co-creation of a multi-generational workforce? And that is especially who will lead it. That is an important question. You can have more than one answer. So I don't see the poll again, so I have to trust that it is happening.
No, it's not wanting me to launch it. Can you launch it from your side?
No, I cannot.
No, I can't see it yet. Can anybody else?
Not, if not, we're just going to skip it. It's okay. You know, we'll do that next time. Thank you very much for today. It was really, there was so much energy and so much focus, and I really want to thank our keynote speakers, Bradley Sherman, Avivah Whitmer-Cox, Elizabeth Keenor, and Viola Edward. Thank you very much. Thank you, our facilitators, for the breakout rooms and all those who joined and really participated. And I'm going to give the word to, give the floor to Mike, who is going to prepare you and share you a little bit about what will be happening on Thursday.
Thank you very much. And thanks for, it was really an amazing discussion today. I think we learned so much that this generation's views on life is anything but traditional. We've got so much to offer. I mean, we've talked about multiple careers, different ways of living lives. And one of the things that we've learned is that people having so much to offer are often looking to see, is entrepreneurship something for them? Shall I go out on my own? Is that my next step? Is that really where I want to go with my life? Owning your own business can give you such a great sense of purpose that it really is something that a lot of people in this generation are looking at. And we're going to look at that on Thursday with 3 wonderful speakers. And I'll leave you with one last thought, which hopefully will be a bit of a teaser. One of the speakers we've got is a gentleman who's in his 80s, and he was the winner of our Silver Starters program, who we started a couple of years ago. And he said, when he received his prize, he said, one thing you should ask yourself when you retire is not, what am I going to do? Am I going to drink coffee or something? But what am I going to become? And I think that idea of what am I going to become fits so nicely with what we've said today, and is really a great motivation for how we should lead our lives. So looking forward to Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel. Hopefully you can all dial in, and we're looking forward to the discussion then.
Thank you all for joining us, and see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.